Twitter fast. Let's retweet this, and let's retweet this. And take a sip of water. Just let this kind of cook a little. Oh, man. Got a few things connecting. I thought 3 connecting. And let me pull this back here. I'm always super nervous that after a bunch of changes, if I've done this correctly or if I've done this properly. Actually, let me check YouTube real quick before we jump in and start talking about stuff. I do show live. I've got some chats coming in. I see Chris Lopez. I see Jonky. I see Chad Lynch. Greetings. Jonky, right out the gate. Thoughts on the MKBHD video? I think this means we're live. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, tech fans of all shapes and sizes and sorts and persuasions, welcome to another Monday morning tech chat show. Today, on a Tuesday, really want to send the warm fuzzies, some really great feelers. Last Sunday night, my daughter was not feeling very well, and unfortunately she stayed up sort of vomiting all night long, and just was something bad she ate, and had to put out sort of like the last minute call, like, hey guys, I gotta postpone the podcast, sick daughter, we're gonna do a daddy-daughter stay-home day, and I'll get some writing and some video editing done. And I got just such a great outpouring of well wishes from people, like out on Twitter and stuff. And we ended up watching, I think, almost 8 hours of Dinosaur Train and Sid the Science Kid, and sitting on the couch and drinking soup broth and eating dry toast. And it was the first time she'd ever really had to stay home from school sick. So it was a good daddy-daughter sick day. I want to thank all the folks out there that were sending their get well soons. But yeah, we have a lot to catch up on. We have a lot to talk about. First, a little housekeeping. I did not pull up a tab for this, but actually the first bit of housekeeping is I'm finally into the final stages of getting my rebuilt workstation up and running. We are doing the stream on Project Asteria. My new workstation, Threadripper, new motherboard, obviously it's a Threadripper, fast drives, lots of RAM, and this is like the first live public torture test. I did a game stream, just streaming some Torchlight, still had a lot of optimizing to do, still had a lot of bugs to fix, had to reinstall Windows again. This is the true test. If it can go 2 hours on this stream, then I think we'll be in good shape. And then also, I've changed up my audio kit quite a bit, where I used to have different solutions for like Skype and for Google Hangouts and for this live stream, which I'm using OBS software for. And I'm hoping that this new workstation has fixed some of those gremlins too, so that I don't have to have 3 different audio input devices just to handle different types of streaming things. So I was down a lot longer than I thought I was going to be. Whenever you rebuild your PC, when you build a new workstation, all kinds of funky little gremlins pop up. It took me an entire day to sort out software issues and to get a drive cloned and to reactivate my Windows license. Then I had an NDIS driver error, and then my video card was not recognized by Windows 10, but there's no onboard video with the Threadripper. So all this stuff was just something rough. But yesterday was a good, because, daughter was sick and I was able to just kind of camp out, and I was breaking in the new workstation, and we were hanging out together. I ended up getting 2 videos finished that I've been sitting on for a while. So they're in early access for the Patreon, the patrons right now. I have my LG V40 1-month review. So that is finally done. I've been using the V40 for way too long to not have a review out. And then also I got hands-on with this fun little photo grip. So this is the Adonit photo grip, which kind of gives you a beefier handle on your phone to turn your phone into a better camera. Those will be going public probably tomorrow and the day after tomorrow, so Wednesday and Thursday. But I finally got them finished, got them rendered. Had, again, a number of crazy, weird audio processing bugs that I had to work out. The Adonit photo grip, every time I would go in to edit it, both in Premiere and in Vegas, I would like scrub in and I'd zoom in and I'd move back and forth, and then the audio would just corrupt. And I couldn't figure out what was wrong with it. So they're done. They're finally done, and that makes me super happy. I'm seeing from the master, the lag is gone now. Audio in sync for me as well might be an issue with the internet on your end, guys. I don't know. This is a more simplified audio setup with a better direct connection than what I was using before. So I don't know if there's something happening on the YouTubes, but again, one of the things that I'm trying in this rebuild is not catering just to YouTube. Whenever I try and solve all of the problems of YouTube or Hangouts, it basically introduces a ton of issues for every other platform. And so what I'm really going to be interested in, what I'm going to be curious to see is looking back on this stream on Twitch. Because I think I want to start pushing... I've been saying this for the last 2 years. I'm going to figure out Twitch or what I can do on Twitch. I think we're getting to that point, especially with this new workstation build where when it wasn't complete and it was still having a lot of problems, I was streaming an old Diablo clone, Torchlight 2, and doing just a little audio commentary, and man, the thing was running pretty good even for having some problems. I think I finally have a platform in place where I can much, much better do a single system streaming rig. Whereas before, like if I really wanted to use Twitch, I kind of needed to break out both the desktop and the laptop to keep everything running smooth. Skylar Bond, maybe my awesome V40 is just that good. It's a 12-minute review of the V40, so that's pretty good. Aditya Anil, wait, no, you only use YouTube to stream. Sundar Pichai is listening. Shh. Yes, of course. The SGGQA podcast Monday morning tech chat show, which is only available on YouTube. All right, guys, let's get into some news. That was a bit more of a rambling housekeeping. Short story, incredibly long. V40 review done, coming very soon. Next on tap will be the OnePlus 6 review, then also my Sennheiser gaming headset, the KZ AS10. I'm finally back on track. So I've got another 4 or 5 videos in the pipeline that are going to be hopefully arriving pretty regularly from this step on. I'm excited to get that stuff done. I hated being sort of in a holding pattern. It's done. All right, so first I want to knock out the politics. I know people get a little twitchy when we talk about politics on the podcast, and I often would save it for later in the show. We're gonna blow through these. Net neutrality, telecom, tech politics. No one's enjoying it, either conservative or liberal. We're all unhappy about this, but we still need to keep these topics in regular discussion. And the first part of this is extremely frustrating given the results of the midterm elections that we just had, because it shouldn't be a left versus right issue. Most of the country, most of the population is on board some kind of net neutrality style regulations. So why are so many House Democrats not supporting net neutrality? This is an article from Motherboard. House Democrats who haven't supported net neutrality yet have all taken money from the telecoms. Oh, well, that would answer my leading question. From the article, the Democratic members of Congress staying mum on net neutrality have all taken campaign contributions from major telecom companies, according to Federal Election Commission's filings. In May, the Senate passed a joint resolution under the Congressional Review Act that would overturn the Federal Communication Commission's decision to scrap free internet rules last year. That resolution was then sent to the House, and the Democrats introduced a discharge petition, which, if it gets 218 signatures, will force the House to vote on the resolution even without the recommendation of a committee. The Dems have until December 10th to get 218 signatures, which would require every Democrat and a few Republicans. So far, they have 177 signatures. What the heck? So we have Brendan Boyle in Pennsylvania, Robert Brady in Pennsylvania, G.K. Butterfield in North Carolina, Matt Cartwright in Pennsylvania, Jim Costa in California, boo! Henry, I don't know how to pronounce your last name, Kuehler in Texas, Dwight Evans in Pennsylvania. I'm seeing a trend out of Pennsylvania. Vincent Gonzalez in the Tri-Caucus area, Josh Gottheimer in New Jersey, Gene Green in Texas, Tom O'Halloran in Arizona. I'm not particularly surprised there. Mary Gay Scanlon in, wouldn't you know it, Pennsylvania, David Scott in Georgia, Brad Schneider in Illinois, Kristen Sinema in Arizona, Philemon Vela in Texas, Pete Visklosky. These can't be real names in Indiana, and Frederica Wilson in Florida. All of them receiving significant campaign contributions from Comcast, Verizon, the NCTA, which is a lobbying firm, AT&T, Comcast, Verizon, NCTA, Comcast, AT&T, Verizon, Comcast. Those company names seem to come up a lot. From Sean H., net neutrality is a must. Chris Lopez, because they get kickbacks. I mean, this is what's so frustrating is, like, in terms of campaign contributions, they don't even get that much money from these individual companies and organizations, and yet the legislation that they draft benefits those donors to the tunes of billions of dollars, and a completely monopolistic business practice for different locales. From Sean H., 5G is coming in the next few years, and the last thing that telecoms want is for internet access to be treated like a utility. I'm glad you brought that up, Sean H., because that's a perfect segue for my next story. So this is coming by way of Ars Technica. What is the FCC hiding? Pi still won't release net neutrality server logs. So this is a story that's been ongoing. The FCC claimed that there was a denial of service attack during the initial round of comments for net neutrality, for repealing net neutrality, I should say, excuse me. And no one has been able to get a Freedom of Information Act request confirmed or passed through this current FCC, which is super frustrating. From the article on Ars Technica, the Federal Communications Commission has once again refused a New York Times request for records that the Times believes might shed light on Russian interference in the net neutrality repeal proceeding. The Times made a FOIA request in June 2017 for FCC server logs and sued the FCC in September of this year over the agency's ongoing refusal to release the records. The court case is still pending, but the Times had also appealed directly to the FCC to reverse its FOIA decision. The FCC denied that appeal in a decision released today. From Tech Leathercraft, we should start a Kickstarter and buy our own politicians. I mean, again, this is what's hilarious is what there was a recent, it was during the Kavanaugh hearings where I forget what her name was. She's one of the GOP Senate members who's often held up as being, more rational and more of a moderate. But when people started funding a campaign against her for someone who wasn't even running it, like they didn't even have a challenger for her seat, but they had poured a couple $1 million into whatever fund was going to be used to populate a candidate against her. She started acting like, oh, this is like bribery. And you take money from major corporations all the time. This is very much not bribery, at least how you've defined the rules of how politics should go down. If this is not how you want politics to be done, maybe we should look at some campaign finance reform. I'm just saying. But again, you won't hear fiscal conservatives talking up that point. Excuse me, elected, air quotes, fiscal conservatives talking up that point a lot. Sorry, just a quick water break from the most delicious coffee mug available on the internet. SoCal Dallas Kid, we will be talking about Tumblr just a bit. We got to make it through the net neutrality news. I'm gonna do this. We're gonna do this efficiently. So this is also from the article from Ars Technica, from Rosenworcel. I don't know how you pronounce his name. Again, I'm real bad with the names. Rosenworcel, I believe, is the name of the FCC chairman who's been commenting on this. She had the dissenting opinion against this, and she sort of stepped up to fill the hole left by Mignon Clyburn, one of my all-time favorite political operatives in this space. She was the most vocal liberal-leaning chair on the FCC commission. So Rosenworcel says, something here is rotten and it's time for the FCC to come clean. Regrettably, this agency will not do this on its own, so it falls to those who seek to investigate from outside its walls. That quote is even more demoralizing given the last article we just took a look at, where we have the path in place to eliminate the repeal of net neutrality if it weren't for politicians who seem to be catering undue influence to corporations that don't have the population's best interests at heart. The FCC is in a pretty sad state right now in terms of being obviously managed to cater to the industry and not as any kind of regulatory or consumer protection agency. Getting to the end of this Ars Technica article, an interesting little tidbit of info to leave off. So this is at the end of the article. Separately, Pi's FCC has failed to fulfill an Ars request for records related to the FCC's measurement of in-home broadband speeds. The FCC hasn't released any new data from its speed tests in nearly 2 years, and we've been trying to get information about the future of the program. So under Tom Wheeler's tutelage, the former head of the FCC, they started a practice of, the FCC has its own speed test app, and it measures both home and mobile broadband internet, because at that time we were having those really tough discussions about what to classify broadband. And we had just increased the threshold for what should be considered actual high speed or broadband internet. And if you fell below those caps, then as an ISP, you were not allowed to advertise your service as broadband. At the same time, we were also trying to start conversations about minimum data transfer rates. So a Comcast can go into an area and say, oh, you've got a 300 megabit download. And then in the fine print, in the little asterisk by that, it's up to 300 megabits, but you're probably only going to get like 50. So in a number of European countries, in the UK, they've already been debating this topic as to what should an ISP be allowed to advertise as speed on their network. So if you have a burst transfer rate of 100 megabits per second, but you can only hit that at 4 a.m. when no one else is on the network, and you can only sustain it for a fraction of a second, then you're not really delivering what you've advertised, and you need clearer advertising as to what your service really costs and what you really get for that money. The FCC was a part of that discussion. It used to be a part of that conversation, and it was a service that helped consumers better understand what they were actually paying for. In much the same way that speedtest.net is super, super popular, the FCC was also conducting similar tests in not a controlled or a scientific way, but in a sort of a crowdfunded and a mass populist way. So it's extremely frustrating to see that hasn't been that's probably a program that's withering on the vine. This is something that they should be leading the discussion on, because that's sort of their purview. They're the FCC, but instead they're taking the back seat. And one of the reasons why I think that is because any data that would be coming out now would fly in the face of claims made by Ajit Pai. Specifically, this is our last net neutrality story, folks. Hang in there. We're almost done. And this is by way of Tech Dirt. Let me go back into screen share right quick. Oh, look, wireless sector investment is declining despite tax cuts and the repeal of net neutrality. From the article, for the first couple paragraphs, you'll recall that one of the top reasons for killing popular net neutrality rules was that it had somehow killed broadband industry investment. Of course, a wide array of publicly available data easily disproved that claim, but that didn't stop FCC boss Ajit Pai and ISPs from repeating it, and in some cases, lying before Congress about it. We were told more times that we could count than we could. I think he means more times than we could count. That with net neutrality dead, sector investment would spike. You'll be shocked to learn this purported boon in investment is not happening. So, I mean, again, none of us are surprised, but we're all disappointed that tying infrastructure to things like tax breaks and net neutrality, they're not related in the slightest. We don't lay fiber because the organization is spending less in taxes. We don't build broadband to rural areas because the ISP can't control what gets throttled and what doesn't get throttled. Those have nothing to do with each other. If we want to roll out more broadband, we need to look at state law, which prevents competition. The only time our services get faster, legitimately faster, and we actually see the improvement from the tax dollars that have been invested in infrastructure is when there's competition. A Google Fiber pops up and suddenly Comcast seems to get real interested in cutting their prices and speeding up their connections. A municipal broadband initiative launches, or you get like gigabit in Tennessee, and suddenly AT&T is real interested in throwing up some super fast, some fiber themselves. That's the only thing that moves the needle on major corporations like this, because without those disruptors in the marketplace, then you end up with this sort of entrenched gentleman's agreement, faux monopoly, where only one service will be available, only one fast service will be available in an area, if they even get that. And then you get like some gimmicky DSL to sort of act as competition, but we all know that's not really competition. So we've spent the last 2 years listening to these operatives muddy the waters, cloud the debate, focus on things that aren't really related to net neutrality, and conflating that with some kind of free market conversation when really it's only served to put more money into the mega corporations that have already acted as winners. Smaller ISPs are not able to compete on the same footing. State and local law still favors these monopolistic business practices. Consumers have not seen significant increases while prices are climbing. Services are getting throttled again, and we're probably going to be seeing a new round of court cases coming up over the next year on things like game streaming also getting throttled at the same time. That Spectrum Time Warner lawsuit on the East Coast has not been completed as far as I know. All of these things are going hand in hand, and we have Democrats on the take. Awesome. So yeah, it's not been a great week. It's actually not been a great couple months for the net neutrality conversation, the infrastructure conversation, or the tech services conversation. But we got a bunch of new phones, so we got to talk about that for the last 2 months. All right. So that was the wrap up for net neutrality. I keep bringing stories like this up because it's still critical that we maintain this conversation. The media will tap out very quickly. This is techie geeky stuff, and they don't believe that general consumers care about these kinds of things. But we know that's not true. We know that whenever there's an opportunity to join this conversation seriously, that the majority of Americans out there will weigh in. Not the majority. a significant chunk of Americans out there who will join the political discussion process will join this conversation too. It's not as sexy. I hate using that word, but I've been hearing it on a lot of political podcasts lately. It's not as sexy as like the healthcare debate or the opioid crisis or these other major headlines, but this is a topic that still garners some interest and still garners some discussion. It's just when mainstream media walks away from it, it's up to us to kind of maintain it in our circles of family and friends. These kinds of stories need to be pointed out because this data, wireless sector investment is declining. They're not putting this money that they're getting from increased fees, increased surcharges, increased service charges, and tax breaks into infrastructure. That money goes directly into shareholders' pockets. If they're not going to improve these services, then we need to have a conversation as communities, as states, as municipalities, as a country about how we can better spend this money. Because I think we're getting a really crap return on our investment. From Jim Cleveland, I heard this morning that all of North Dakota will have gigabit broadband within the next 4 years. That's exactly the kind. So I believe it's North Dakota has a municipal broadband initiative that also in urban areas offers a 10 gig connection. It's ridiculously expensive, but it's there. This is what I was really hoping for in Tennessee, but unfortunately you've got characters like Marsha Blackburn who stand staunchly against the efforts in Chattanooga. You've got a lot of the population in Tennessee that's woefully underserved, but you've got this perfect system in Chattanooga that they could roll out, which has proven to be profitable. After the initial investment from the Department of Energy, their gigabit broadband initiative has been wildly successful. So we've got these great data points, we've got these great solutions, but right now, what people are more interested in talking about is 5G. And I think 5G is going to be a severe disappointment for the first couple years that it's technically available because we don't really have the backhaul. It doesn't matter if you've got a super fast router. If you can't connect that super fast router to a big honkin' pipe and get your device some kind of preferred access on that pipe, then it's not really going to be a great solution. It's going to be sort of LTE, it's going to be 4G LTE plus. It's not going to completely revolutionize or radicalize how we consume content, how we interact with different services, and then also a lot of it's going to be on metered connections anyway. We have these opportunities to make sure that at least homes are well connected, and we've been falling down on that job. We've been leaving a lot of people behind, and it's time to start catching them up. From Fat Produce, Andrew Wallace, the House GOP campaign committee just said that they were a victim of cyber intrusion during the 2018 campaign and have informed the FBI. Well, that'll be interesting to see how that goes down because, I don't know, the GOP haven't been super friendly with the FBI, so I wonder how that investigation is going to be handled. From Rory Ahern and then Skylar Bond. Feeling so bad for you guys. Back-to-back comments from people watching this saying, oh, well, we have the super fast 3 megabit connections where we live. Chris Lopez, I'm in Florida and AT&T is only 65 meg down. From Skylar Bond, you don't really need more than 65 meg. This is what's so frustrating about the way that our country has staged this conversation is services now have to cater to people with slower connection speeds. So then folks who aren't really invested in this conversation or who don't really understand tech go, well, people aren't asking for faster speeds. And what would you do with that faster speed? It's one of those things like once you have a better connection, you get better services. It's always going to be a tick-tock pendulum swing back and forth kind of situation. One of the things that I like to point to is if consumers or if citizens in more rural areas had access to the actual definition of broadband as set up by the FCC, which isn't very fast. I want to say it's a 20 meg download, and I think like a 5 or 10 megabit upload. We could start offering better services for things like healthcare for people who live far away from hospitals, who don't get to see primary physicians very often. We could start offering services where they could telecommute into their doctor's offices. Here in California, we have a major crisis of roadway congestion and air pollution. And we're constantly having conversations about air pollution. It's been getting a lot better thanks to automobile initiatives, even though our current presidential administration is trying to cut into that. But we could then push harder into initiatives for things like telecommuting for work. Once you start offering better internet connection service, you get better data services. We're on the cusp of, I just got an update on Google Play Movies that my copy of Die Hard is now available in 4K to stream. Thankfully, I have a fast enough download speed to handle a 4K video. As soon as, I'm pretty sure I'm getting tagged occasionally with some throttling that I'll be in the middle of watching a movie and it looks amazing, and then boom, it goes into like super pixelated mode for a couple minutes, and then it recovers and catches back up to that stream. And I'm on the fastest stream that Spectrum offers, the fastest data connection that Spectrum offers in my area. And I struggle with 4K. We're gonna start talking about game streaming, Google Project Stream. We're gonna start talking about 8K content. These things matter. They all go hand in hand. And we can't keep saying or falling back on the idea, oh, well, you don't need 4K. Oh, you don't need 8K. Oh, you want to stream a game? You don't need to stream a game. Without an improvement in infrastructure and faster data speeds and less throttling and less data caps, we can't get to those next generation services. And that's what's so frustrating about this. We're talking about investing in the future. If you're in a downturn economic situation in your local community, one of the things that could help you would be having competitive broadband. You know, if you want to be a sort of a township of entrepreneurs and small business owners, now outside of the gig economy of just driving around in an Uber, if you had faster data and you were a musician, you could be competitive on the world stage for giving music lessons or cutting collaborative music with people around the world. But you can't do that if you're on less than broadband defined internet connection speeds. So we'll put a stopper there. We'll definitely be talking about net neutrality for the foreseeable future because our political process just maintains and dictates that this is a conversation that won't be sort of concluded anytime soon. From Sean H., technology and the internet have been the biggest agents of change in the world over the last 10 years. Yep, that's pretty much it. Aditya Anil. Yeah, having the doctor reading a person's full history and current records while consulting a patient in a rural location would be amazing, and especially if you could set up a high-quality video feed. Like, hey, doctor, I need you to see this weird thing on my thigh. We all know it's not really on your thigh. Come on. All right, let's get into some other stories here. Okay, I saw an extended conversation in the live chat. I'm gonna skip my order here. I had sort of a different layout for the topics and for the stories, but apparently y'all want to talk about porn. So let's talk about porn. The article I pulled up was from The Independent, but everyone's talking about Tumblr to ban all pornography in a major policy reversal. From The Independent article, Tumblr will ban all adult content, it has said. That is not true. Sorry, that was my edition. That wasn't from The Independent. Back to the article. The decision is a major reversal for a company that partly made its name for the relative availability of explicit content on its site. I don't know, do we call Tumblr a site or do we call Tumblr a service? Let me know what you think. Back to the article. The ban will cover just about anything. See, not all, just about anything. I'm already annoyed at the way that they've written this. Sorry, back to the article. The ban will cover just about anything that can be known as explicit. Adult content primarily includes photos, videos, or GIFs that show real-life human genitals or female presenting nipples, and any content including photos, videos, GIFs, and illustrations that depict sex acts, it wrote in its announcement. Now, text will still be admitted, so erotica can still be posted on the site. It will also allow the non-sexualized images of women's nipples. Whew. Okay. First of all, that's really that the way that article is written is super annoying. It's going to ban all adult content except for all of this adult content that it's not going to ban. Awesome. This is a conversation that we've been having a lot with Facebook. I've been bringing up these points like I don't like Facebook. I have substantially curtailed any active usage of Facebook. The Some Gadget Guy Facebook page only has like a couple hundred followers, and it's basically just an automated dumping ground of whatever I'm working on any other platform. The thing I do not envy of Facebook engineers, and a lot of them having been very vocal lately in how their company does business, the thing I don't envy them is the idea that they need to be a social media service and a publisher and police content on their platform. And I think it's a losing battle. I don't think you can properly police content on any social media service. As soon as humans are involved, and as soon as there's a perspective involved, and as soon as there's sort of a primate brain responsible for some thumbs up, thumbs down, let it ride or remove it from the platform kind of decision, you're going to introduce bias and inconsistency in that system. So Tumblr is making this effort to try and weed out adult content, pornography, and immediately they're going to run into problems. There was I think it was a Radiolab, but I could be wrong. It's a great podcast, again, talking about Facebook's challenges with this, and they actually interview some of the independent contractors that are hired to basically just see the worst things that are posted to Facebook, and how every time an image pops up on Facebook, it almost creates a new rule for how they deal with potentially objectionable content. And one of the major fights that Facebook had on their platform was from the breastfeeding community. I am not equipped to properly join this conversation in terms of the aesthetics or what should or shouldn't be allowed in these kinds of communities online. But at some point, someone at the head of one of these companies, a Tumblr, a Facebook, a Google, etc., has to make a decision on whether or not this crosses a line into pornography. And the breastfeeding debate became something phenomenally challenging, where the original rule was no female nipples. Okay, well, that then caused a backlash and outrage from mothers groups who were saying, this is an intimate thing that we're trying to talk about and share information on, and there's a medical component and a health component and just sort of a healthy lifestyle component. And so they wanted to change that rule. So they changed the rule and then said, well, so long as it looks like you're feeding a person, then that's fine. And then that sparked off a whole range of other problems where fetish groups started exploiting that rule. So you would have adults breastfeeding. Well, then they had to try and put an age limit. But some people advocate breastfeeding for a certain period of time, and other people advocate breastfeeding for a different period of time, and some people stop breastfeeding later than others, so that became a moving target. And eventually it got to a point where there were also issues with images of women breastfeeding animals. So then that triggered a whole new conversation as to what is this actually representing, and is this a new fetish, or is this actually an established practice in some third world countries, and how do we draw the line? And there still really isn't a definition that you can hold to. There is no rule. So you can't just stop that conversation. It is an ever evolving conversation where the goalposts move at the speed of every single image that gets uploaded to that platform. So now what started out as like a, hey, like don't show gore and don't show porn were the rules on Facebook. Now there's an operations manual, thousands of pages long, that no one can keep up with. And eventually it comes down to a human in a country, in a server farm, saying, I don't know, that looks bad, I'm going to ban it. Or I just don't care, I'm going to let everything go through today because I'm not really getting paid enough to see the worst images, and they're on the clock. So if Tumblr is going to use a similar service, then we've got some pretty bad, grindy work conditions where someone might need to make a yay or nay decision on what might constitute pornography based on the terms of service laid out by Tumblr in under 4 seconds. I want you to go through your own collections of photos. If you're listening to my podcast, chances are pretty good that you've got a Google Photos or a OneDrive or even just a hard drive on your home computer that's got a number of images. And I want you to full screen set up a slideshow and then set the timer to 3 seconds. And I want you to classify every photo on your hard drive individually in 3 seconds. So, keep it simple. That's a photo of my mom. That's a photo of my sister. That's a photo of my pet. That's a photo of a vacation. That's a photo of a vacation. That's a photo of vacation. And I want to see how long you can really keep that up. Under 4 seconds. It boggles the mind, and AI is not smart enough to pull this off. So, again, I feel like there's going to be a huge market correction. There's going to be, this is a losing battle for any type of social media service. But why these conversations are now coming to a head and why these conversations are becoming so critical today are because of the recent changes in how laws affect the backbone platforms, the backbone services that we use on the web. So this is in response to changes in legislation where the company fulfilling the backbone service can now more directly be held liable for the content that is found on their service. Because of those challenges that I laid out, and because you can't consistently hold to rules. I think Twitter is another great example. Twitter seems to issue bans very inconsistently on people who use their platform. If you can't find something that at least visibly, publicly looks like you consistently hold to the rules that you lay out in your terms of service, eventually people are going to be upset, people are going to complain, and the only other recourse is to start looking at legislation. If tech companies and tech communities cannot adequately police themselves, eventually lawmakers are going to look at, deciding to step on that turf too. So now there are a number of initiatives where, if you've got a Tumblr, I think Verizon owns Tumblr now, and your service is found, people are found on your service trafficking child porn, then this new legislation, if you are not making a good faith effort to scrub your service of that kind of content, then you could be held liable directly for that kind of that kind of reprehensible practice. So I think, unfortunately, what we're going to see is a fairly broadsword approach towards just scrubbing. Just getting rid of as much of this as they can, as viscerally as they can, as aggressively as they can. That's the word I wanted. So I wonder what that's going to mean for these underground communities. There's a part of me, because the next story I have is on Apple. You know what? Let's use this to transition into our next story, because I feel they're related. There is no direct, tangible connection between Tumblr making this ban, enacting this ban on pornography, with Apple and their sort of deplatforming strategy. But I feel like they're cut from similar cloth. And I feel like as much as we might celebrate Apple deplatforming white supremacists, part of the reason why is because on Apple's platforms, if Apple allows apps on the App Store or allows apps that allow white supremacists a platform, they too could potentially be held liable for what we might consider hate speech or violent rhetoric, or again, also things like child pornography. So I think we're in for some very challenging course corrections from major corporations that probably won't be able to sustain some notion of true objective platform freedom. I just don't think it's sustainable. I've started this conversation off with Facebook. I think it's a losing battle. And at some point, you have to concede your loss and course correct. You have to come up with something else. But unfortunately, I think that means we're going to push underground communities even further underground. Those people that are out there to harm individuals, to harm children, to traffic in slavery, I don't think they're going to go away. They might actually become harder to find because of some of these initiatives. But I think a lot of us would agree, you're cutting a huge chunk out of Tumblr's user base. So I don't know what Tumblr resembles outside of the sort of, I don't know. I mean, do we call it the social justice? Is that still? I mean, it was never a cohesive platform. You would label anyone who was like minorly left of center as an SJW if they had any kind of feelings about things like representation or race relations or racism in our country. But I feel like that became a popular platform for some of the loudest and most obnoxious of the left in that regard. Is that all that Tumblr has left? I feel like social news has kind of wrecked blogging platforms more than anything else. So a first resource for someone might be a Facebook where their news is cultivated by Facebook algorithms, or it could be a Reddit where your news is cultivated by sort of upvotes and downvotes, but there's still an algorithm that changes. Like, you go to Reddit and you vote something, it's not a one-to-one process. It's not a meritocracy. There is an algorithm which also impacts Reddit voting too. But those types of services, I think have really pushed away the blogging platforms of yesteryear. A WordPress is not nearly as dominant a platform as it used to be. I started writing on a Blogger blog. Those things don't really weight internet conversation very heavily anymore because you want that viral push of a platform vetting content first, and then people will read and share from that. People aren't going to individual sites like they used to. They're going to repositories first. I almost said suppositories. They're going to repositories first and then heading out. So this is the next story that kind of leads us into this. Tim Cook to white supremacists: "You have no place on our platforms." Tim Cook receives the first Courage Against Hate Award from the Anti-Defamation League. This is a story from The Verge, from the article. It's a short article. Apple CEO Tim Cook addressed white supremacists and dangerous conspiracy theorists today, reiterating that hateful content will not have a home on Apple platforms. Cook received the first Courage Against Hate Award from the Anti-Defamation League, and he used his time on stage to talk about the company's commitment to preventing hate speech from spreading. Quote from Tim Cook: "At Apple, we believe technology needs to have a clear point of view. This is no time to get tied up in knots. We only have one message for those who seek to push hate, division, or violence. You have no place on our platforms. You have no home here. From the earliest days of iTunes to Apple Music today, we have always prohibited music with a history of white supremacy. Why? Because it's the right thing to do. And as we showed this year, we won't give a platform to violent conspiracy theorists. Why? Because it's the right things to do." Oh, Andrew from Fat Produce. Hashtag courage against headphone jack awards. Ouch. From Sarah, kind of sad we're at a point where speaking out against this stuff is noteworthy rather than the other way around. And from David, I wonder if Tim Cook also feels the same about black supremacists. I bet not, judging by how Apple did nothing about a black French rapper that released a song about killing white children. So, this is where we get into, because I have no fondness for white supremacists and fascists and authoritarians by any other name, but we've got to be careful. We've got to be sensitive to how speech is conducted on private platforms. God, I can't believe I'm having to get into these kinds of conversations in a tech blog, in a tech vlog, tech podcast. But again, as a private platform, which makes its money off of consumer sales and catering to the most popular consumer trends, it's completely within Apple's purview to block content that they find objectionable. Now, how that manifests is always going to be particularly sensitive and particularly dicey because of what I said before. Eventually, you've got to make that decision from a human mind, and that human mind has bias, and that human mind has a perspective, has a point of view, has an agenda, either conscious or unconscious, that's going to lead them to a certain type of decision-making process. I don't think it's the wrong thing to block white supremacists on Apple platforms. And I feel like deplatforming actually does have some merit. My concerns over whether or not those tribes go underground deeper and become more insidious, that's problematic. But I mean, you could look at like the recent, not that I think he's an outright fascist, but you know, it doesn't seem to be a deal breaker for his political conversations to ally himself with white supremacists and fascists. Would be someone like a Milo Yiannopoulos, who is millions of dollars in debt, can't make a living as his agent provocateur mantle would allow him to, because no one will let him spread his messages. I don't feel like he's as objectionable as actual Nazis, but again, it doesn't seem to be a deal breaker to ally himself with people who I find to be extremely distasteful in these kinds of conversations. So deplatforming can work if your stated goals are to try and maintain some more nuanced and reasonable conversation in the political space. But again, this makes me super nervous. It's the same way I felt after Alex Jones got dumped off of a bunch of platforms. I really wish we had better tools for public education. So instead of just taking an Alex Jones and deplatforming him, being able to use the hateful rhetoric and the ignorant rhetoric and the outright lies of an Alex Jones to better educate the populace. Unfortunately, we do live in a society where once he's spread his message, it is phenomenally more difficult to undo the damage that he's done. So we can't get to that point where we can use him as a token, as a showpiece, as a mouthpiece for how not to think. Instead, now we've got to undo the indoctrination and the falsehoods that are spread by him. So I don't know what's worse. Do you let Alex Jones operate knowing that a good chunk of his viewership, of his listenership, is going to be completely co-opted by absolutely ridiculous ideas, and hope that somehow you can fix that when that kind of information is then spread and disseminated generationally? So we've got a problem of kids and grandkids also being sort of fueled by this ridiculous content. Or do you just try and shut them up? Now, the thing that always worries me is exactly the same thing that happens in the political space. Is once we have the tools of deplatforming, do we worry that those tools will eventually be used against communities that we do agree with, or against people that are trying to spread good messages? And that is a very relevant fear. but that's also a future-facing fear. We're trying to deal with the spread of misinformation right now, and our major social media services and our major telecommunications platforms have let us down. Facebook was instrumental in spreading bad information during the 2016 presidential campaign. So we've got an immediate problem in fixing that right now, but that also means I do worry. Again, that's the future fear, but I do worry that if these tools are too broad, or if these tools are not well designed, or we lack the nuance to properly address some of these concerns, then those tools might come back to bite us in our own asses later on if we have to speak about any other kinds of difficult conversations or topics. So that's bad and good and funny. So yeah. From Adam SUC420, I banned Facebook from a life a long time ago. Oh, I think I banned Facebook from my life a long time ago, and almost all Facebook apps except Instagram, I must admit. Yeah, I'm still on the Instagrams too, although their changes totally wrecked how I use Instagram. I mean, I used to be like scrolling and scrubbing through Instagram a lot during the day, but as soon as they manipulated the time feed and I'd start looking at photos like, oh, that was from 2 days ago. Why are you showing me photos from 2 days ago? So now I'm using Instagram way less than I used to be. I think my drug of choice is still Twitter. Just the immediacy of Twitter. And since you can kind of keep going through Twitter and saying like, no, I don't care what I missed. Show me what's coming out now. I follow enough people to keep me on your platform. You don't need to backtrack. That's really the only social media platform that I'm really heavily invested in. And David, this is a great point from David. Honestly, my stance is that you shouldn't ban any type of speech. Trying to find limits to free speech is a slippery slope that will inevitably end in heavy censorship. And this is the nuance of the conversation, because I know people that agree with your sentiment. I don't necessarily agree with your sentiment, but I respect it. I respect the concerns of the slippery slope argument, but I also feel like our political discourse is fluid, and we need to address moving targets. And so having one outright, well, we're not going to let anything infringe on free speech, I find is probably just as unsustainable as we can clean up all speech and media and content and make everything safe for everyone. I think as rational liberals, we were shown how faulty that line of thinking was when we went through the music industry debate, trying to get explicit albums removed from store shelves. You can thank Tipper Gore for helping us see that was wrong. And then the same thing, we had a lot of liberals on board for things like video game censorship, and we learned. I think most rational liberals would agree that we've learned that's not a great way to do business. But when we start talking about the opposite, the flip side of that, the all speech should just be open and free, but we already have sort of addressable limits on things like yelling fire in a crowded building. I think most rational conservatives would say, okay, well, yeah, that's a bad thing. We should probably not let that be free speech. So again, we're always just going to have debates on where should we draw those lines. I would really hope that, for my daughter's generation and generations moving forward, especially with the fluidity of language that we see today, that's only going to get more malleable in the future, that we can just adapt better. That where we need to draw those lines and when we need to make these rules, that these rules aren't so heavily weighted in a bureaucracy and a political process that cements them into a law structure that is incredibly difficult to address. Kind of like when Supreme Court justices would say, I don't know what pornography is, I can't define it, but I know it when I see it. I feel like as a society, we should be adapting more malleable guidelines for etiquette, rather than relying on a legislative process and a law process that is entrenched in very difficult maneuvers and is very difficult to undo when we've made some bad laws. Anyway, let's move right along. One other little bit of news coming out of Apple. So with all of like the stocks and the market news, Apple took that minor market correction. Their stocks dropped for a little bit. One of the things that's been brought up a lot is the waning power, the waning economic power of the iPhone. No one would dispute that the iPhone is still, iOS devices are still the top tier, most profitable segment of mobile computing available today. But as we're reaching market saturation, and I feel this is happening for all manufacturers, not just Apple, but Apple is one of the most visible in terms of premium products with high price tags and high profit margins. Apple kind of needs to start finding what they're going to make money off of next. Now is the right time to be investing in future growth sectors, but no one really knows what that is. And right now we live in an era where if you take a risk or take a gamble on something boundary pushing, more often than not, consumers and techies are going to slam you for it. Oh, it wasn't absolutely perfect and didn't do everything that I thought it was going to do, and it looks kind of silly, and I'm not, better luck next time. This is a fail for me. And then it takes you 3 generations of Surfaces before people go, oh wait, no, that was a good idea and that had a lot of merit. Or you're Google and you just drop Google Glass and you never come back to it, which was the wrong play. They should have been investing in augmented reality and face computers and optics and heads-up displays instead of just like, oh, well, they didn't like it. I guess having Robert Scoble take showers with our Google Glass was a bad way to show off a first-gen product. This is coming by way of CNBC. AirPods are Apple's most popular accessory ever, and shipments will skyrocket next year, top analyst says. So one of the major growth areas for Apple has been accessories. The Apple Watch, I think, is definitely proven to be one of the better smartwatch computing platforms, and I'm seeing AirPods all over the place. So this is from the article, Apple's wireless AirPods headphones could see massive growth over the next few years. TF International Securities analyst Ming-Chi Kuo wrote in a research note released last week. It's a positive sign for Apple as it seeks new growth areas that can help the company squeeze more revenue out of each iPhone user. That's a very diplomatic way of saying price gouging. Kuo, who has a track record of accurately predicting Apple product launches, said AirPods are Apple's most popular accessory ever. Kuo estimates Apple will ship 26 to 28 million AirPod units this year, up from 14 million to 16 million in 2017. So, can you sustain Apple for a couple years until they find their next big thing on accessories? Because right now we've seen iPhone prices skyrocket. All of the major product categories in Apple's catalog have taken at least a 20% bump year over year. So they're 20% more expensive. Excuse me, I can't believe that they're 20% better than the products they replace. And now certain market forces or certain market trends like removing a headphone jack and making it more painful to use cabled headphones then play directly into, well, I mean, we've got this wireless solution. If you want something that's going to play well between your Mac and your iPhone, you can't rely on headphones, cabled headphones, so buy our AirPods. So building pain points into your accessories setup and your distribution chain does seem to have a positive effect on financials, on consumers buying other products and accessories products. I'm doubtful that AirPods will see this sharp of a rise in sales. And also, I feel like we'll be seeing another goalpost move. So I would be very surprised if we don't see a refresh to the AirPods next year, maybe early 2020. But we should be seeing sort of like an AirPods 1.5 as we get more wireless charging infrastructure out for iOS consumers. Those types of moves kind of going hand in hand with refreshing these products, even if they aren't radically different. From Everin Malpica. Wrong article. The top seller is the headphone jack dongle. I can't tell you. Again, if you're talking about something that consumers rebuy on a regular basis, I mean, my wife is on her third iPhone headphone dongle, and I had to steal it to do my iPhone XS audio testing because it doesn't come with a headphone dongle in the box, you see. So that's how you keep your $1,000 price on your $1,000 phone, is by getting rid of accessories in the box. From Aditya Anil, AirPods are crazy popular. So many people I know own a pair, not to mention no more dongle in the box means a higher dongle sales paired with the XR being cheap. I don't know about being cheap, and being a bestseller next year. From Sean H, people have been saying 2020 for an AirPods refresh. From Samuel Ventimiglia, I'm holding out on wireless, cold, dead hands. From Mr. Carol Ware, if Samsung is smart, keep the headphone jack since Apple removed it. I'm pretty confident that we're going to see Samsung following next year. Maybe not on a Galaxy S10, but very likely on any kind of Galaxy X or Galaxy F or foldable phone. I think we're going to see that trend end. Really, it's Samsung and LG are the only ones that are sort of keeping headphone jacks worth keeping in their phones. I mean, you've got a number of other players. I'm going to be spending some time with, where did it go? The Huawei Mate 20, not the Mate 20 Pro, but the Mate 20, the one that has a headphone jack and an IR blaster. And it's just been kind of an interesting retro futuristic smartphone to use because of that. But I think the writing's on the wall for any type of unlicensable, truly standard port. Like, if you can't make money off of it, why keep it in your phone? So, they'll encourage you to buy some kind of Bluetooth solution at time of purchase. Just make sure it stays convenient, because convenience is having to charge something that's going to wear out and has its own battery after a couple years. Fat Produce, the one real advantage that AirPods seem to have right now is the fact that two people can have one in each ear and listen and talk on a call. Other than that, the fast pairing doesn't really matter. And Sarah, and so it was foretold, there will be a million think pieces bemoaning the loss of the headphone jack by the very writers who helped justify the trend. Sarah, I am so happy you're watching this live stream right now. All of these think pieces have been coming out now. We're going to be seeing so many more of them. I mean, it's a regular on Reddit. At least once a week on the front page of Reddit, you're going to see someone like, man, USB-C audio still sucks. Man, I miss the headphone jack. And anytime you've got like a company that's popular that makes that transition, you've got their army of supporters, of loyalists who will go out there and support it. I'm glad Apple got rid of the headphone jack. It's time we moved on. Apple's right. We need to move. And you're like, this is ridiculous. At the same time, I've got my KZ AS10 headphone review coming out soon. A $70 pair of in-ear monitor-style earbuds that have 5 drivers per ear for $70. You pay so much more for wireless, and not all of that money goes into audio fidelity. It goes into batteries and radios and firmware and software and all the other stuff that you need to support a wireless ecosystem. And I bet you my $70 earbuds will probably outlast most of the Bluetooth earbuds I've ever reviewed. But I digress. So this is just another thing that I want to bring up too, in sort of a tangent to this article. Apple really shifting their gears, shifting their focus, and trying to find new market opportunities. When we're talking about AirPods, I'm asking you out there in the general viewing community, please start having those conversations with your family and friends who are maybe just a little less tech savvy, or tech savvy but aren't focused on things like lifestyle, tech, health. I mean, I posted a video talking about how you can set a volume threshold limit on the iPhone, especially if people in your circles of family and friends have kids that are starting to utilize technological, gadgety services. Force a conversation with them. Point out some of the issues that we're facing. I really do believe that Apple plays a contributing role in the extreme rise of the significant rise of hearing loss in young adults. Over the last 10 years, we have seen those numbers spike. And over the last 10 years, the major change to consumer behavior has been mobile audio that you can plug into your skull 24/7, 365, never give your ears a break. And Apple has never supplied any type of audio product in the box that creates a good seal around the ear, which means you're listening on products that encourage turning up the volume to block out noise in your environment. AirPods, EarPods, the original iPod headphones, this has been a consistent trend over the last 10 years. And the main way to fight it is by changing consumer behavior. And Apple actually does give you tools on the iPhone. Android doesn't have this built in. I have to give Apple credit here, where you can go into the iPhone and set a volume threshold limit. And that volume threshold limit should be set when you're listening in a quiet environment. When you're listening in a quiet environment and something starts to feel kind of too loud, it's too painful, that's where you should set your limit. If you set your limit when you're already out in a noisy environment, the ear has a defense mechanism called threshold shift, where it's trying to prevent you from feeling discomfort by changing how you respond to louder sounds. That's why, if you're like, I used to go to clubs and stand by the subwoofers, and you leave and everything's really dull and soft and fuzzy sounding, and there's a ringing in your ears. My ears were trying to protect me, assuming that I wasn't going to be encountering that loud sound for as long a period of time as I did. It takes like a whole day, and then your ears feel like they're starting to recover. That damage is never undone. Your ears are permanently damaged. Well, that also happens at a finer level with consumer hearing, with consumer audio products. You don't have a good seal around the ear. You're taking your EarPods or your AirPods out to the gym, and oh man, I just got to drown out all of the other workout equipment by me. I'm going to crank up the volume just a little bit more. Your ear is going to try and protect you. Your ear is going to try and make that not hurt your head. But that also means you're doing impact damage that entire time. So again, this is where I become a zealot, and this has been one of my sort of campaigns over the last year, is healthy hearing, facing a whole generation of people that are probably going to have to buy hearing aids much sooner than they otherwise would have had we not had these kind of tech gadgety tools at our disposal. Have those conversations with your family and friends over the holidays. Recommend maybe some gel covers for their AirPods, something that will help improve the seal around the ear. If they talk about, well, I need to hear what's going on around, I just need to, I don't want to get run over by a bus, recommend some bone conduction. The ears are completely open. You can hear everything that's going on in your environment, and you're not forcing audio into the ear canal to establish that. Or recommend some other products that are going to properly close off. I don't like things in my ear. Recommend some good cans, some good closed back headphones. And you see people wearing them on flights because they're really comfortable. They do a great job of passively blocking sound from entering your ear. And then they've got active microphones to help filter that. And then you don't have to listen as loud for a high quality audio experience. It's just my plea. This is the holidays. This is where we should be looking out for our fellow man, our brethren, our family, our friends. It's going to be annoying. And a lot of people are going to fight you on it, and they're going to roll your eyes at you. But plant that seed, especially for parents, especially for kids that are coming into their own. They're not going to be able to make good choices because they don't have that information. Apple doesn't advertise this kind of situation for their products. It's up to us to rejoin that conversation and to make sure that the people we care about have good data to work off of. And you don't need to say, don't buy AirPods. It's just make sure you set a limit so that you can't blow out your hearing with AirPods. And I think people will be responsive to that. And my general hope is they'll be responsive to that, they'll try it, and they'll realize, oh, well, the volume limit that's comfortable when I'm at home sounds like garbage when I'm by a busy intersection. And I want to turn up the volume louder when I'm in that situation, but I can't. that is part of the problem with the product that I've purchased. That's a problem that's built into this gadget. They're calling it a feature. This is definitely a bug. Mr. Carol Ware. It's always the holidays. What freaking month in the United States does not have a holiday? Yes, but the end of the year holidays are all about reflecting on the last year. We come up with New Year's resolutions. It's sort of baked into the tone and the climate. You're not wrong. I'm just saying this is why I'm bringing it up again right here. We have a story about AirPods. I'm going to keep talking about AirPods. Google Pixel Buds are even worse for this kind of situation, but any type of open ear headphone is bad for you, ultimately, unless you change your behavior to make it less bad for you. And most people don't like what it sounds like when you make that product less bad for you. And then you've got like $20 Chinese earbuds that sound freaking phenomenal. Just you don't have a headphone jack to use them anymore. So too bad, so sad. All right. Skylar Bond. Holidays in the States is October to December. No, I think I think Mr. Carol Ware was right. I think it's January to December. It's just there's a very specific holiday tone that I'm tapping into for this in parts of your discussion. Short story long, talk to your family and friends, join that conversation, and help them protect their hearing. And also, just good for you guys too, right? It's always worth trying to preserve what we currently have. Just because you've done some damage to your ears doesn't mean you give up. It doesn't mean you give up on you. Don't give up on you. From Hitul Katyal. I'm so sorry, that's probably not how you say your name. Do you find the Mi Audio M6 better than the KZ stuff you've been trying? So, as you may have seen, I have been using the crap out of the Mi Audio M6 Pro. I'm not going to hold them up close to the camera because I have psoriasis and these look really gross because all of that psoriasis scarring and extra skin and flaky skin goes into my ear canal too. Makes headphone reviews very difficult to show high quality 4K video of things that have been in my ear. We don't have to hold on that for too long. I've been using these a lot. So the M6 Pro are $50 in-ear single driver monitors. I really like them for work. I do like them for entertainment, but they're not as juicy or as rumbly. You have one driver. You have one good driver that's very well tuned, but there are sort of frequencies that aren't as well represented. Now, the reason why I've been sticking with these is because they're not really $50 earbuds anymore. What I did, I have a whole video on this. I drove down to the Mi Audio offices in City of Industry, and they did an optical scan of my ear canal and then 3D printed molded ear tips for my M6 Pro. As soon as you custom fit an audio solution for your exact biology, the improvements are phenomenal. So even though I do like the sound of the less artfully tuned KZ ES4 at $20, I can't wear them nearly as long as I can wear my molded M6 Pro. That being said, to get a mold of your ears with the M6 Pro drivers, and I also do have the Bluetooth cable. I do like using them wirelessly too. The whole kit is $250. So that's for a really good monitor style earbud, molded ear tips, and a Bluetooth neckband cable. That's a really good deal. I mean, think about how many just, basic headphones start hitting that $200 price point with, wireless options. That's an excellent deal. But if I were really comparing the sound quality for things like music and for movies, I kind of like the ES4 dual drivers just a little bit more, and those buds start at $20. I don't trust those buds as much for work though. So again, I really feel a number of people would be well served by having two solutions. I think a workout solution and a really nice premium listening solution are probably the best bet for most people out there. So I have a work solution with these M6 Pro. They are never outside of arm's reach. When I want to plug in, and especially if I think I'm going to be working for a long period of time, man, those things go in my ear fast. Even so much I've sort of devalued my near fields, the speakers on my desktop. I'm A-Bing between the two, but they're so comfortable. I can wear them forever. Like, they're just great. But as soon as I'm out and about, I don't necessarily want to take my work solution out with me in case something happens to them. So a $20 pair of KZs, awesome. No, that's real good. If anything happens to my KZs, I can replace the cable, or I can just buy a whole new set for $20. So I'm feeling really good about that being the twofer solution, the twofer situation. Katiel, you actually pronounced my name well. Awesome. From Skylar Bond, I failed as a musician. I didn't always use earplugs on stage, and now I have tinnitus. Oh man, I'm really sorry to hear that. I would recommend for anyone who feels like they've done some hearing damage, if you have the means or if you have the ability to on your insurance, book an appointment with a specialist. I had a conversation with Dr. Grimes. She's the head of audiology at UCLA, and it was a really ear-opening experience for me, even being as passionate as I am about this stuff. But I definitely suffer from hidden hearing loss. It's something that we all just kind of take for granted, but is also a situation that's been getting worse lately. Is you can go into a GP, or you can get a basic hearing test done in a controlled environment, and your results are pretty good. Like, your hearing is average or above average, everything's great. And then the second you go out into some kind of noisy environment, you can't isolate audio at all. When I just recently went to a rap party for Orbital Redux, the show Yuri Lowenthal was working on. He did my creator chat a couple weeks back, and it really drove the point home again. Loud music playing in a noisy environment, and lots of people trying to have really hip Hollywood industry actor, producer, director, writer conversations. And I really am not able to hear the conversation. I'm as much reading lips throughout the conversation as I am actually hearing the person speaking to me, unless my ear is right on top of their mouth. So I think a lot of us suffer from problems like that. Well, those problems are exacerbated by poor listening habits. So if you're already dealing with some kind of hidden hearing loss or a more obvious tonal damage like tinnitus, it's worth having a conversation with a medical professional to see what you can do to hold on to what you got. Don't make it worse. Again, you can always make this worse. Your hearing can always degrade more until you have zero. This stuff doesn't heal, it doesn't come back. Let's see, I've got a bunch of... From Goran Petrovic, any comment on the LG G7 boot looping issue in Europe? So I haven't read up on it a lot, because the main sites that have been talking about, apparently a batch of G7 started boot looping in Europe. The main sites that have been pointing this out, unfortunately, are in other languages, and though I've been translating them, as near as I can tell, this doesn't sound like the systemic hardware problem that the G4 and the Qualcomm 808 and 810 series phones faced. As near as I can tell, this looks like a real bad batch of firmware, because I haven't seen similar groups of phones having boot looping problems here in the United States. And the G7 is a Project Fi compatible phone. So my wife is currently using my G7 on her Project Fi account. I don't think I'm ever getting that phone back. I think Marie likes that phone a lot. And she especially likes that she doesn't have to use a dumb dongle when she's in her car, like she has to with her work iPhone. Sorry, sidetracked there. Because we haven't seen the same firmwares being pushed to all regions, and we're seeing the main batch of phones being affected in a fairly localized area, would lead me to believe that this isn't the same danger that we had with the G4, where hardware components were actually failing. Instead, it does seem like that bad software is to blame, and hopefully that there is a fast corrective action. I know LG's already set up some kind of replacement or return system, which seems to me that they've already identified what the main issue is, and that they're trying to get ahead of this problem way better than they did during the G4 days. So I think that's what the situation is. From Steve DeRoche, I forgot to bring my earplugs at my last concert, but at least I'm considering bringing those because of you, although I'm not a concert type of guy. Steve, I am that dork. I always have a pair of in-ear earbuds with me at all times, and it's because I've been stuck in situations where I didn't realize that I was going to be in as loud an environment as I was. And so I was even at like a jazz club, and like, man, it was a hard surfaced walled stage, and the reflections were cringe, blink inducing. And I was that dork. I popped in my earbuds, and it looked like I was not listening to the concert, but I couldn't handle just the discordant echoes and reverberations coming off of the stage. We went to go see what movie did we see? I'm legit spacing. We just took Lex to go see a movie a couple weeks ago, and we brought her little pink headphones just so that we could block her ears if the movie theater was too loud. She's still going to be able to hear everything. It's not going to muffle it to the point where she can't hear. But, you know, we've been in kids' films where they just crank the volume on the audio in there, and it sounds awful, and it's painful to listen to. And she's been in situations where she's kind of like her daddy. She's super sensitive to any type of hearing stuff, and she'll cover her ears if she thinks a fire engine driving by is too loud. You know, we can enable this type of behavior. We shouldn't be mocking it or ridiculing it. And Adam SUC 420, I still have my HD 25 2s. Oh man, mine are right over there. Sennys, I love those Sennheisers. They are some of the best field monitors and broadcast monitors I've ever used. I flipping love my HD 25s. Ronald Collins, I just got an update on my G7 this morning. No boot loop here. Kudos on the update. We're still waiting on the Project Fi G7, the unlocked G7 getting another update, because mine still does not have the camera update for 60 frame per second UHD video. Aditya Anil, I always carry my in-ear monitors as well. Will have my daily driver KZs hanging around my neck, and I have a pair of cheap out-of-the-box pair in my bag at all times. Do it right. Okay. So I'm going to cancel one of my stories here. There was a story about Microsoft working on another foldable PC, phone, tablet thing. I'm just not that into it right now. So I want to get to one of the other major stories that was breaking yesterday and today. I think it was posted like late last night, if I'm not mistaken. Oh, from Mary P. I've taken my autistic daughter to the theater and asked if they can turn down the volume a bit. I think it's important that they know. I had a very positive experience at one movie theater, the ArcLight, where two people, I left with another person independently of each other, and we both made it out to the lobby and like, was it way too loud? And like, yeah, are you going to complain? Yeah, I'll go with you. Let's go complain together. They instantly jumped on it. I had a not so good experience at an AMC where they acted like I was trying to nanny everyone else's fun. And I don't know, it was just one theater attendant, but it was still like, I seriously want to never do business with AMC ever again if these are the jerks that they're going to pay minimum wage to. But I'll probably get over it. But yeah, I mean, again, join the conversation, speak up for yourself, be an advocate for yourself, and treat yourself well. Your ears included. Okay. Shifting back, I just feel vindicated because I was right all along. Everyone else was wrong. Everyone else was wrong but me in being a fan of this particular phone. And it was totally verified by a public vote. I am, of course, talking about the totally scientific, completely objective. There's no way anyone could find fault with the testing protocol methodology or the voting. The blind smartphone camera test from MKBHD, the whole bracket where I am happy to report, I am thrilled to report, I am completely vindicated that the BlackBerry Key 2 has a better camera than the iPhone XS and the LG V40. Best phone of the year, right here. MKBHD confirmed. I told you first. No one can argue with these results. It's totally above board. This is how we should do all of our camera comparisons, is basically just telling people that I was right. And next level analysis there, guys. Pretty much the best. All right, so for those of you, if Samuel Ventimiglia, mic drop, BlackBerry Key 2 FTW. Okay, obviously I have a lot of thoughts on Mr. Carol Ware. I'm keeping my V40. As you should. From TK Bay, next level analysis here. Abraham Artemis. I'm just going to keep reading these. These are hilarious. Long live BlackBerry. From @FatProduce, BlackBerry needs to hype this video. So I have had a long-standing feud with the rest of the tech community where we echo chamber and we knee-jerk on things like cameras. I don't believe most tech journalists, tech reviewers, really do a good job of analyzing and reporting on camera trends. And I think this is a really good example of different tools for different solutions biting this gimmick in the ass. One of the things that really bothers me about this MKBHD video is how vocal and how obvious Marques is in trying to game the bracket. Yeah, so, I set up this early bracket and I thought this would be an easy win for the iPhone. I put it right up against the BlackBerry Key 2. And now let me pixel peep and show you why you were wrong to like the photo from the Key 2 that I shared on Twitter, which has heavy compression. But when you see the full photo, when you see the real photo, I can tell you why you're wrong to like the Key 2. But I thought what I was doing was making it easier for the iPhone to win in this bracket. But the iPhone does this different type of processing that doesn't look as good when you compress the photo on social media. That bothers me. You didn't do a random draw. You didn't pick phones. You purposely picked phones to pit against each other to try and arrive at a conclusion that would be self-reinforcing. You tried to arrive at an SEO popular phone winning the bracket. If it was going to be an iPhone, if it was going to be a Pixel, if it was going to be a OnePlus, that serves your video way better than if it's in North America, a BlackBerry or a Huawei or even a Samsung at this point. Because Samsung, for whatever reason, is just not pulling the same kind of numbers on their videos that like OnePlus can generate, or that OnePlus can turn your video into an ad. And I have a problem with that. I don't like, even for a gimmick, even for something silly like this, I would like some kind of consistency or protocol or testing. And when it doesn't go your way, don't blame people for having an opinion. The BlackBerry Key 2 beat out the iPhone XS in a vote of two ridiculously bad photos. So the thing that also bothers me is I don't know who's helping Marques with these tests, but they didn't even frame the photos consistently. Like, I know each phone has a difference in focal length, and you can say like, oh, these were taken from the same position at the same time, blah, 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 blah. But even like angle and exposure and like the clouds that are sort of covering the light that's backlighting him as a subject, these are objectively awful portraits of Marques. And so each phone is going to have wildly different protocols for handling this type of terrible lighting situation, especially for a gentleman of African-American persuasion. We all know cameras also have difficulties in properly exposing for darker skin tones. especially in these kinds of mixed lighting situations. So already the photos seem gimmicky. They don't seem consistently set up to capture similar looking images to best highlight what each camera can do. Then they're heavily compressed by being shared on social media and then having people vote on those heavily compressed social media photos. And for all of that, he couldn't force the win for a popular phone. And in his video, he explains why the iPhone photos are superior, except for the exact test case that he's showing. If the main audience for your photos is going to be a heavily compressed version on Instagram or a heavily compressed version on Twitter, all of this supposed superiority of Apple image processing or Pixel image processing flies out the window. When you can't pixel peep, you lose a significant advantage for some of the image integrity from these more expensive cameras and these more expensive phones. And I've actually gotten into some heated discussions with other popular tech reviewers when I've been saying, if you don't know how to camera, then yeah, you should probably go with a Pixel, but a BlackBerry's really not going to hold you back. It's not the best camera of the year. It will probably be one of my least favorite cameras of 2018. And it's still not a deal breaker. I have gotten some phenomenal photos out of the Key 2. It took a little patience and it took a little education. You have to shoot a little differently on a BlackBerry than you do on a Pixel. Oh, mind blown, shock, gasp. But you can do it. And all of the fun features are pretty well executed. I've got this amazing portrait mode photo of Lex just excited to be getting a bowl of macaroni and cheese at a restaurant at just after sunset, streaks of light, hard contrast, a moving toddler about to faceplant into a bowl of macaroni, and the portrait mode from the BlackBerry Key 2 nailed it. That photo is awesome. We've printed it 5x7. You can't go too big, but I'm making prints from phone photos with software bokeh blur on BlackBerries. This is not a deal breaker. But I've gotten into arguments with people, and especially on Instagram, where someone who's pretty well educated in photography but wants like a BlackBerry keyboard or wants better security on their phones, and immediately if I say like, nah, you'll be fine, I get people rushing in like, no, you need to buy a Pixel. No, Pixel's the best. And you're like, that's not what they're asking. They want BlackBerry features, and they're asking if the camera is going to be a deal breaker. And when I go to their Instagram, I see that they're a really good photographer. If they're a really good photographer, the BlackBerry's not going to hold them back. They're going to be fine because they'll get good images out of whatever camera you give them. No, Pixel. So, I'm really happy this worked out the way it did. I was actually pretty frustrated that we're sort of just fine with someone like Marques coming out and saying, I tried to give the iPhone easy wins. It's $1,000 phone. This phone doesn't need to be coddled. Apple is making an argument that this is worth the same as a Galaxy Note 9, that this is worth $50 more than my LG V40, that this is worth almost 2 of my OnePlus 6Ts. Why do you purposely build your bracket to pit the iPhone up against a BlackBerry first, and then make this all about social media image compression? I don't get that. I really don't understand. I mean, if you're going to have a whipping boy in your bracket, or a couple, because you also had a Poco phone too, and the Poco phone made it further than anyone was expecting also. iJustine wigging out that the Poco phone made it so far. It's because the worst camera of 2018 on a smartphone is still light years better than where we were 5 years ago. They're not deal breakers. You're doing fine. Unless you have very specific concerns or you have very specific needs, why I will travel with my LG V40 to Vegas for CES is because I have specific issues that I need to address if I'm going to use a phone as a soup to nuts vlogging platform. I'm not going to take a laptop with me to Vegas. Second year running, LG phones give me the tools to enable that kind of thing. But then also it's just a bad look when you not only explain that you tried to rig the bracket, but then you complain. Let me tell you why you're wrong. There's a whole section of this video, this smartphone camera test, where he goes, oh, and seeing like the BlackBerry even looked at my hoodie and thought it was noise, and it tried to do the noise removal. Well, guess what? We couldn't see on a compressed image. So your test again verifies that the mainline usage for these kinds of terrible images is going to be social media. And if the main usage is social media, guess what doesn't matter? Pixel peeping. So this is what's funny though. So, I mean, I've got from Ronald Sims, but one, people just want to snap and forget. And apparently, if that's your MO, if you just want to snap and forget, then you are better served with a BlackBerry camera than you are with an iPhone XS. So this verified again. Not only is the BlackBerry camera not a deal breaker, but it's the preferred shooter for self portraits, for Instagram photos, and for sharing on Twitter. Like you should want to use a BlackBerry photo if all you want to do is upload a super compressed social media friendly photo. Aditya Anil, Poco did well, but I was surprised to see the OnePlus 6T taken out so early. The OnePlus 6 had a dope camera. Again, this is what's so frustrating about this type of public vote, is that it's all based on whatever juiciest image altering photo editing gets squished by social media and then uploaded. I mean, again, I'm making all of these jokes in jest because I think we'd all agree. I mean, like, if you had your choice, you will do better work. You will do better work on an iPhone XS camera sensor than you will on a BlackBerry camera sensor, and ditto the V40. I mean, the V40 also lost to the BlackBerry. I'm not going to be using the BlackBerry as my vlogging platform for CES. We can all rationally discuss that. But again, if his test is structured to show what it would look like to snap a mediocre photo, poorly composed, in challenging light conditions, and compress the crap out of it and shove it up on Twitter, then that's the gig. That's exactly what he accomplished. From Ronald Sims, I got into it with someone on Reddit who think the pro modes are useless on mobile cameras. You're always going to face that. It's not worth debating that person. It's only worth showing other people what you can do. Every single time I show off a photo from a V40 or from a Huawei, I'm almost exclusively shooting in manual modes, even when I'm shooting full auto. And those photos look better. They look better. I do not like AI, auto, awesome, HDR, heavy-handed editing and processing. Every single time I showcase those types of images, the things I capture do better than what the phone does to alter the photo for me. Sean H., I think the entire test is wildly flawed. Well, again, because it's not a test. He doesn't test things. He's not a testing guy. He's an overview guy. He's the best overview guy on the internet. But he's not a deep dive guy. And I don't know where he got a reputation for being a camera guy, because he's not. Just because he shoots on a Red doesn't mean he's into the analysis of this stuff. He's into the overview of this stuff. And his test is actually amazingly valid for not what he wanted to accomplish. He wanted to accomplish some type of SEO popular phone winning a bracket, so he could point to that and say, see, this is justified. You bought a popular phone, and now everyone can agree that it's the best. And when it didn't go that way, he had to create this entire video getting people's reactions, because without those reactions, the SEO doesn't work in his favor. The SEO doesn't work for Marques if the winner is a Huawei. The SEO works for Marques if the winner is a OnePlus, a Pixel, or an iPhone. That's his jam. Anything else he's got harsh criticisms for. He's got those tough talking points. Those phones, you soften the edges on what may or may not be a problem because so many more people are going to follow your discussion and verify that they made the right choice because they also bought the popular phone. I'm not saying he does this deliberately, and I'm not saying he even does this consciously. I think this is something that just gets self-reinforced. As your channel picks up more views and your channel picks up more viewership, you start to find those trends, and then those trends lead where he'll make a couple videos about a OnePlus. He'll make several videos about an iPhone. He won't even review an LG G7, and he won't add the G7 to a camera comparison. But he'll then come out in a future video and say, oh, well, the G7's just so underrated. It's your job to rate phones. If it's your job to rate phones and you think a phone is underrated, then you're not doing your job. Scott Michael, I really think he should have had multiple phones against each other instead of a bracket of iPhone losing again against the BlackBerry in one image. But I mean, like, that's why he did the bracket. He did the bracket because he thought it would be an easy win for the phones that he likes. Then it wasn't, and then he had problems. He couldn't make the video he wanted to make at the end of the day. Mr. Carol Ware, want to take real pictures? Buy a real camera. I mean, I definitely appreciate that sentiment, but you, Mr. Carol Ware, you also own a V40. So I feel like you've got pretty good cameras on your phone. Fat Protos, I should do a wide angle camera blind challenge. That could be fun. Again, talking about some other photo features that typically aren't as popular to discuss on other platforms. From Abraham how do you say your last name? Abraham Artemius? Artemis? AI mode is basically lazy mode. I have no problems with a good lazy mode. I shoot full auto in my manual modes most of the time. Actually, that's not entirely true. I very regularly adjust the exposure even when I'm shooting full auto, but it's still full auto. The camera is making most of the decisions for me. I'm not sitting there doing like, oh, well, what's the white balance? And I should increase the shutter speed. And ooh, what's this focus point? Let me do this with the ISO. I'm not doing all that. I've got a toddler. I've got to snap that photo fast. But my problem with AI mode is that it's learning these types of machine learning algorithms that try and make images based on other popular images are just creating a self-reinforcing cycle of bad photo editing. So just because an image is popular or an image is somehow deemed valuable doesn't mean that the same processing for a future image is going to work. So if you take a sunset photo and it's really hyper stylized and just HDR crushed to within an inch of its life, it doesn't mean that the next time you go to shoot a sunset photo that you want that same effect. Instead, you might want a really hyper stylized silhouette image where the shadows are super, super dark. You're not pulling all of the shadow detail up. You're pushing it back down. You're crushing that shadow detail. My problem with AI mode is that it's teaching people photography, because you do sort of adapt to it by following trends, instead of really delivering tools for people to accomplish what they may or may not want. And it's a very sensitive topic in the tech community because apparently we're not allowed, consumers should never have to change their behavior or learn anything new or be treated with any kind of modicum of respect, that they're all mouth-breathing troglodytes. The average user is apparently barely functional and often not able to dress themselves in the morning without some AI assistance. That seems to be the prevailing trend of this conversation, whereas I feel like if you're watching this podcast, you have a little bit more respect for any type of creative process where someone might decide, make a choice to want something even just a little bit different than what the AI or auto mode might want. So yeah. Okay. Let's see. Several people talking about MKBHD's videos being shallow, but again, I feel like he's the best at what I don't mean this as a slight. I really do believe he is the best overview guy, but we also need to have some type of conversation in our various gadget communities that, if I want a good real world perspective on laptops, not like a deep dive gamers style benchmark heavy examination, but a real world usage situation. It's why I love Mobile Tech Review. I love Lisa. I love her style. I love her consistency. What she focuses on in her reviews is very consistent, but I don't turn to her for hardcore graphics examinations and benchmarking. I don't turn to her for, in-depth analysis on camera quality or audio, but she delivers one of the all-time best lifestyle conversations about computing, about gadgets, about electronics. I just wish that I don't turn to Marques for deep dives. I turn to Marques because you want that sort of fresh, out-of-the-box, pretty examination of a gadget, and he's going to make it look really artful, and he's going to make it look really simple and really clean and effortless. Marques introduces the conversation better than anyone else on the internet. He's incredible, and he's tactical about that. But that's also, I feel, where his part of the conversation stops, and we should be handing the next part of the conversation off to someone else who's going to take a little bit more of a deep dive into the experience of using that gadget, and then having several people who have different focuses, who have more of an artistic focus, more of a content consumption focus, more of a creation focus. And then I think we get a much more global, a better, well-rounded look at what a purchase could provide you, instead of saying Marques thought it was hot, but he said to that other phone, better luck next year. So yeah, I'm with him. Just perspective, the proportionality of what it is that you're trying to accomplish. That's what I feel is sort of most important. From the master, don't label overviews as a review. Yeah, that's good life advice in general. From Philip Morales, I freaking love Mobile Tech Review. I'm telling you, it's like what I really hope we can come back to on YouTube is getting away from trying to impress the audience with the most cinematic camera work, because I definitely can't pull that off in my gadget lab. But, little pockets of focus on specific aspects, specific features, and walk an audience through pieces of nuance. If you really want to know what a camera can do, maybe I'm your guy, or maybe DxO is your jam, or maybe DP review is where you should go. But I don't leave camera discussion up to YouTube tech reviewers. Most of them, I feel, get it wrong. Almost none of them handle it with any consistency. You'll never see the same photos moving from phone to phone to phone, the same testing conditions, the same real-world locations. It's almost always, here's a terrible composition of a fire hydrant at midnight under yellow street lamps, but look at the color. That's how you know the Pixel is the winner. And that's... Here's my one swear for the podcast, folks. Cover the ears of impressionable children. That type of camera testing is bullshit. It is useless. It is completely beside the point. It accomplishes almost nothing. From Ricardo Bonilla, for an experiment to be valid, you need to be able to reproduce it with the same results every time. Otherwise, it's not really objective. Marques photo contest cannot be reproduced. Yup. James W. Oh my God. If I ever meet Lisa, I'm going to steal this from you, James W. Lisa equals the Bob Ross of technology. I love her videos. She talks about technology in a way that's simple, but accessible and empowering. Again, I cannot recommend her content enough, and I feel she is such a valuable voice in this space. The parallel to that, exactly what I was talking before. I don't turn to Lisa for specific examinations, deep dive, meaty, aggressive analysis, but I regularly will jump from a Lisa Mobile Tech Review video over to Erica Griffin, right? So if I want to know way more about the display quality on a phone than I should ever need to know, Erica's my jam, right? we've got these individual producers that all have incredible strengths in how they approach this topic, this conversation. We should never be hung up on what one person's analysis might be. We've got to spread the wealth on those kinds of conversations. Ditto a dude like Flossie. I very regularly disagree with Flossie, but he is consistent. And I don't feel he has ever obviously traded what he values in a phone based on an individual benefit of one phone over another or anything like that. Again, I don't always agree with him, but I feel he stays consistent. Lisa stays consistent. Erica has cost herself PR relationships because Erica stays consistent. And that's what I think we should all aspire to be if we're talking about technology in any type of meaningful fashion. From Ronald Sims, I watched Demir because he is consistent with his reviews, and that's why I bought the HTC U11. Bam! The Nitpicker, absolutely. I love Demir's videos. And again, being able to cross several different types of audiences is an incredible strength of Demir's that I think is woefully undervalued. From Forsaken Land, what do you think of GSM Arena reviews of phones cameras? I don't really have any terrible criticisms of GSM Arena's review policy in general, except for their audio tech. I don't believe they're doing a good job of testing smartphone audio, and I think they're years out of date for where market trends have gone in an era of 32-bit DACs and crazy amps and Bluetooth 5 and LDAC versus aptX HD compression. I think they're off the pulse. But for their camera testing, because of the way that they divide the workload between their different editors, I think they do a reasonably good job of staying consistent. It's just I don't value what they test. It's kind of like the DxO argument. I don't believe DxO's single score numbers have any benefit to the consumer. I think they actually, again, I think they stand in the way of having a reasonable conversation because they just have this one number score. But if you go through DxO's testing protocols and you look at each individual category, I think you get a much better representation of what DxO values in their reviews. But again, that's going to be different than what GSM Arena values in their camera reviews. And that's going to be very different than what I value in my camera reviews. So the best possible result that you could get as a consumer is to watch several of our reviews to see what it is that we value, what it is that we're focused on, what it is that we're trying to accomplish, and then who of us lines up the best with your usage, with your concerns, and with your needs, and then sort of weighting our information based on your own personal preferences and bias. And that's what we should be doing with everything. And from Philip Morales, I think it's awesome that GSM Arena is making reviews along with their website. I mean, like, if GSM Arena is not one of your first resources for digging up information on phones, then I don't think you're doing the internet right. I think you're smartphoning incorrectly. I know several of the editors there. I've worked with several of the editors there. And just for all of their data collecting, the encyclopedic knowledge of phones coming from those individuals, and the consistency, again, that word, the consistency of their testing, even when I think their testing is wrong, they're still consistently wrong, which is incredible. So it's pretty great. From Fat Produce, how would you recommend people do their own sort of battery tests based on their own usage? So this is something I've struggled with a lot, because my usage on phones is very heavily weighted for screen-off usage. Driving around, listening to a lot of audio, a lot of podcasts, a lot of music, and trying to minimize distractions on my phone. My screen-on time assessments are always way worse than many other tech reviewers. Again, this has been sort of an initiative over the last 2 years to maximize the impact of any interaction on my phone and minimize the distractions, which means I'm not just using my phone screens as often as I used to in years past. I don't know that there is a good way to report on how different usage can be conducted in any way that's meaningful to real world situations.
Again, I think GSM Arena has the best consistency in how they test different phone platforms, call time quality, video quality, call time quantity, video streaming quantity, and then ranking phones based on those kinds of metrics where the phone had to be out of commission for like 3 days as they just charged it and used it and charged it and used it and charged it and used it. Excuse me. But I don't think that always reflects real world use, right? I think the V40 is a great example of a phone that performs well under some benchmarks, performs terribly under other benchmarks, and has given me a lot of inconsistencies too, where one day I make it through the whole day like awesome, and then the next day I'm dead by lunchtime. There's something going on with the V40, but I can't scientifically narrow down what that issue might be. And there isn't a testing protocol that I think can properly contend with the incredible computing challenges, because it's not a phone, it's a pocket supercomputer that has different apps and services running at different times with different updates and different alerts. And you might have a really busy day of texting one day and then take a bunch of phone calls the next day. It doesn't work. That's why, like, for my reviews, I kind of tapped out. I do a video streaming test. I talk about how long it takes to recharge, and I try and extrapolate some general trends that I used the phone throughout the day, and it made it past dinner. It didn't make it past dinner. I got 2 days of runtime on the BlackBerry. The V40 was dead by mid-evening. Like, that kind of stuff is incredibly difficult to get a handle on. So unfortunately, I think the consumer just kind of needs to adapt with their own charging solutions. If the phone had all of the other features that you wanted at the price that you wanted, then you just got to make sure that you've got a backup battery or a car charger or a couple extra home chargers, and that you can use the phone as you want to use the phone. Hopefully the battery lasts. If it doesn't, you've got some way of topping it back off. Well, folks, I think we should probably start wrapping this up. Here, let me get this out of the way here. So one thing, just sort of quickly following on that Marques camera comparison story. I'm not going to spend too long on this, but another company's been caught using DSLR photos to fake phone photos, and this time it's Samsung. So I wonder if that factored into Marques's test. Like, did he use a Canon 5D and then call it a Samsung like Samsung is? That would have been pretty funny. But this story, I'm going to link it in the description below this video. But the story is really funny because it's a person who's just started uploading photos to a stock photography website, finds one of their images is sold. They get all excited. I want to know where it got used. And then they see a cutout of their portrait on a Samsung ad showing off the background blur, the software blur mode on the advertisement, which is hilarious. So again, I mean, we got to tag companies that do this. You're misrepresenting your product. Huawei doing it with like a DSLR, trying to fake a selfie with a DSLR. Nokia back in the day, demonstrating image stabilization on a Steadicam rig, not on one of their phones. And again, Samsung should know better. If any company actually with selfie cameras is doing pretty good, it's a Samsung. They should be able to construct the right conditions to properly show off what their cameras can do in the best of circumstances. And if they just got lazy, that's a bad look for Samsung. So boo hiss, boo hiss, boo hiss. All right, folks. Someone said talking about Huawei. I like how you used Huawei as an adjective. That's hilarious. All right, folks. It's time to wrap this up. Like I said, a lot of stuff coming to the channel that I'm finally catching back up on. I'm hoping to do a Project Asteria build video next week and talking about the new workstation, everything that's gone into it, and also a major shout out of thanks to the folks at AMD for a lot of consulting on some of the issues that I was having in getting this build up and running. Threadripper is looking like it's going to be a monster platform for me to be working on. The other exciting little bit of news before I fully leave off this podcast, I'm going to be joining the folks at All About Android tonight. The live room starts at 5 p.m. Pacific time. And then I'm going to be joining my sister from another Mr. Flo Ion. Just talking about some cool Android stuff, maybe some holiday gift guides, some last-minute techie stocking stuffers, some stuff that folks in your social circles might want to jump on, or you might be some fun gifts to give. And then again, it's all about Android, so we're going to be talking along about Android, I'm sure. So 5 p.m. Pacific. If you're catching this after the fact, then you can download. You'll probably be able to download that podcast. I think Wednesday is usually when they post their audio versions. So I hope you'll join me tonight. Again, for way more extended conversation and talking and podcasting. Today's going to be a lot of talking, and my voice actually made it through this one, so I'm going to shut up now and rest, drink a ton of water so I can join Flo and have another long-form conversation. Folks in here talking about some great, like people who bought KZ earbuds. Steve DeRoche, I'll be trying to join the AAA chat for once. They have a great chat room. Actually, their chat room is a lot of fun, so definitely jump in on that if you can watch the live stream. From Philip Morales, can't wait for the PC videos. Me neither, now that I can finally make videos again. And Fat Produce. Oh, sweet! I love All About Android. I love All About Android. Oh no, that's a great question. From Fat Produce, what's your app for the Arena? I haven't picked one yet. I gotta do that right now. Oh no. So right now I'm 2 for 3. So I was second place for my micro investing app, but I was oh no, wait, I've been on 4 times. I'm 3 for 4. So I was second place for my micro investing app, but I've taken first 3 other times. So I've got to bring my A game and find a good app for the Arena. Oh, that's scary. Okay, so thank you everyone so much for joining. This was another amazing conversation. Just a couple quick reminders. Keep some pressure on the net neutrality conversation. We desperately need to have grown-up conversations about technology and politics. I'm in earnest. I'm very serious and not joking when I ask for your help in having a conversation about hearing health. For the number of your family and friends who are going to be getting cool tech this holiday season, one of the things that we subsidize corporate profits on is our ear health. So have those conversations about setting better listening habits, healthier listening habits for your family and friends there too, and also for yourself. Treat yourself well this holiday season. I'll still be streaming throughout. Probably taking a break in late December from the podcast, but I'm definitely going to be doing another show next week. And then after that, it's go time. We're going to start talking about CES stuff. So we're going to be right back in the thick of it. I'm not going to get much of a respite from the craziness of October and November. So we'll do that upright. We'll save those conversations. We'll save those bridges for when we need to cross those bridges. All right, folks. Thank you so much. Amazing chat. Thank you so much for joining the conversation, continuing to join the conversation after we're out of this podcast, and just keep being awesome to each other, because I like that we've been able to have some pretty challenging and debatable topics in these different arenas, and do so in a civil fashion with respect, and even when we disagree with each other, that we can do so in a kind way. So folks, you know where you can find me next week, probably back on Monday, barring any illness in the family, on the Monday Morning Tech Chat show. I want you to have a phenomenal rest of your week. Have an awesome week doing awesome things with awesome technology, and I will catch you next time. Be there. I will be here, and I think we're going to have a fun time doing it. It's the worst ending ever. I love you all. Be well. Take care.